Fort Benning sprawled across the Georgia countryside, its training grounds baking under the merciless summer sun. For Private First Class Emma Reyes, the heat was just one more challenge to overcome in her journey to prove she belonged in the infantry, a branch of the Army only recently open to women. At 24, Emma was older than most of her fellow recruits in the 56th Infantry Battalion. She had completed college before enlisting, giving her a maturity that set her apart from the teenagers who made up the majority of the new soldiers. Today marked the beginning of their third week of advanced individual training, the grueling course that would transform them from basic trainees into infantry soldiers. "Listen up, people," Staff Sergeant Mills called out as the platoon assembled in the shade of an old oak tree. "We've got a special instructor joining us for the next phase of training. Master Sergeant Calloway will be overseeing your tactical field exercises." Emma straightened her posture as a figure approached from the direction of the company headquarters. Master Sergeant James Calloway walked with the measured gait of a career infantryman, his weathered face testifying to decades of service. Despite being in his early 50s, his physique remained imposing, lean and muscular beneath his uniform. "At ease," Calloway said as he reached the group, his voice a gravelly baritone that commanded immediate attention. "For those of you who don't know me, I've been with the 56th Infantry for over 30 years, both as an active-duty soldier and now as an instructor. My job is to ensure you understand what it means to be part of this battalion's legacy." Emma studied him carefully. Something in the way he carried himself spoke of hard-earned experience, the kind that couldn't be taught in any training manual. A thin scar ran along his jawline, and his hands bore the calluses of someone intimately familiar with weapons and harsh conditions. "Over the next 3 weeks," Calloway continued, "you'll learn tactical maneuvers, field craft, and small unit operations. But more importantly, you'll learn about the brotherhood and now sisterhood that defines the infantry." His gaze swept across the platoon, briefly pausing on Emma and the 2 other female recruits. There was no hostility in his look, but rather a measuring quality, as if assessing their readiness for the challenges ahead. Staff Sergeant Mills stepped forward. "Master Sergeant Calloway earned the Silver Star in Afghanistan. You'll do well to listen to every word he says." A murmur of respect rippled through the platoon. The Silver Star was the 3rd highest military decoration for valor, awarded for gallantry in action against enemies of the United States. "Save the hero, worship," Calloway said gruffly. "What matters isn't what I did yesterday, but what you learn to do tomorrow. Now grab your gear. We're moving out to Training Area Bravo for land navigation." As the platoon dispersed to collect their equipment, Private Jason Cooper, a lanky 18-year-old from Tennessee, sidled up to Emma. "Another old-timer who probably thinks women don't belong in the infantry," he muttered. "You don't know that," Emma replied, adjusting her rucksack. "And even if he does, we'll change his mind by performing, not complaining." Cooper shrugged. "Just saying these old combat vets can be stuck in their ways. My brother's in the 10th Mountain Division, says some of them still can't handle the idea of women in combat roles." Emma understood the concern. The integration of women into previously all-male combat units remained controversial in some circles, with veterans of earlier eras sometimes among the most vocal critics. But she had learned to let her actions speak louder than any preemptive defensiveness. The day progressed with grueling intensity as Calloway led them through increasingly complex land navigation exercises. Unlike some instructors who shouted constantly, he spoke with quiet authority, demonstrating techniques with precision before watching the recruits attempt them. When Emma successfully located a particularly challenging waypoint before anyone else, Calloway simply nodded. "Good work, Reyes. Now help Torres get his bearings. He's 15 degrees off course." By late afternoon, they had established a small patrol base in a wooded area of the training grounds. As the recruits prepared their evening meals, Calloway moved among them, checking their setups and offering occasional guidance. Emma was finishing her MRE when Cooper and a group of the younger male recruits gathered nearby, their conversation drifting her way. "My dad served with the 56th in Desert Storm," Private Wilson was saying. "Said it was a different army back then." "My grandfather was with them in Vietnam," another recruit added. "Fought at Ia Drang." Cooper snorted. "You all buying into the legendary 56th stuff. Every unit thinks they're special." "The 56th has a legitimate combat history," Emma interjected, unable to resist correcting him. Her academic background had included military history, and she'd researched the battalion's lineage after receiving her assignment. They were at Normandy, the Bulge, and served with distinction in Vietnam and Iraq. "Thanks for the history lesson, Professor," Cooper replied with a smirk. "Did you memorize the battalion Wikipedia page before enlisting?" Before Emma could respond, Calloway's voice cut through their conversation. "If you're all so interested in the 56th history, perhaps I should share some of it." The recruits hadn't noticed his approach, and they quickly scrambled to attention. "At ease," Calloway said, settling onto a fallen log near their small circle. "The 56th isn't just another infantry battalion. We have a saying, once Ghost Battalion, always Ghost Battalion." "Ghost Battalion?" Cooper asked, his tone still carrying a hint of skepticism. "That's right," Calloway confirmed. "The nickname dates back to World War II. During the Battle of the Bulge, our battalion was surrounded by German forces near Bastogne. Cut off from the rest of the division, low on ammunition and supplies, they were presumed lost. 3 days later, they appeared behind enemy lines, having not only escaped the encirclement, but captured a German artillery position in the process." Emma listened intently, nodding how Calloway said, "Our battalion rather than the battalion," a subtle but significant indication of his personal connection to the unit's legacy. "The Germans had been reporting that they'd wiped out the American unit," Calloway continued. "So when our men appeared where they weren't supposed to be, headquarters started calling them the Ghost Battalion." The name stuck. "That's in Vietnam too, right?" one of the recruits asked. "My uncle told me stories about ghost soldiers in the jungle." Calloway's expression shifted subtly, a distant look entering his eyes. "Vietnam added another chapter. A platoon from the 56th was ambushed near the Laotian border in 1968. Heavily outnumbered, they disappeared into the jungle rather than surrender. For 6 weeks, they conducted guerrilla operations against North Vietnamese supply lines. The enemy became convinced they were fighting ghosts because the Americans would strike and vanish without a trace." Cooper, still playing the skeptic, rolled his eyes. "Sounds like the kind of story that gets better with each telling. I bet by now they were fighting off a whole division with nothing but pocket knives." A tense silence fell over the group. Emma winced internally at Cooper's disrespect, but Calloway's response was surprisingly measured. "Healthy skepticism is good in a soldier, Cooper," he said calmly. "Questioning narratives keeps you alive in combat, but disrespecting the sacrifices of those who came before you is something else entirely." "No disrespect intended, Master Sergeant." Cooper backpedaled slightly, recognizing he'd overstepped. "Just saying war stories tend to grow with time." Calloway studied him for a moment. "They do, and some shrink because the full truth is too heavy to carry in everyday conversation." He stood, signaling an end to the discussion. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's exercise starts at 500. As he walked away, Emma noticed something she hadn't seen before, a tattoo partially visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. The design was difficult to make out, but it appeared to be some kind of stylized ghost or spirit figure. "Nice job, Cooper," she said once Calloway was out of earshot. "Way to make a great impression on the combat veteran who's evaluating us." Cooper shrugged defensively. "What? Every unit has these overblown stories, my brother says." "Maybe stop worrying about what your brother says and start paying attention to what's in front of you," Emma interrupted. "Master Sergeant Calloway has forgotten more about infantry tactics than either of us will learn in this course." As the recruits prepared for the night, Emma found herself reflecting on Calloway's stories about the 56th. There had been something in his voice when he spoke of Vietnam, a personal quality that suggested more than academic knowledge of the events. She wondered how much of the battalion's more recent history he had witnessed firsthand, and what experiences lay behind that measuring gaze that had assessed them all earlier. What she couldn't know then was that the connection between Master Sergeant Calloway and the Ghost Battalion ran far deeper than any of them realized, and that in the coming days, both she and the skeptical Private Cooper would discover truths about their instructor that would fundamentally change their understanding of the unit they were joining and the legacy they would inherit. Dawn broke over Fort Benning with a symphony of sounds that had become familiar to Emma during her weeks of training. Distant artillery fire from the ranges, the rhythmic cadence of running formations, and the ever-present whine of helicopters overhead. By 500, her platoon was already assembled at the edge of a densely wooded training area, fog still clinging to the ground between the tall Georgia pines. Today's exercise simulates a reconnaissance mission in contested territory, Master Sergeant Calloway explained as he unfolded a topographical map across the hood of a Humvee. You'll be divided into four-person fire teams. Your objective is to locate and observe 3 designated points without being detected by the opposition force. The opposition force, or OPFOR, consisted of experienced soldiers playing the role of enemy combatants, equipped with blank ammunition and training sensors that registered hits. Being killed in an exercise meant hours of uncomfortable remedial training, a fate every recruit was eager to avoid. Reyes, Calloway called out, "You'll lead Fire Team Alpha, take Cooper, Martinez, and Chen." Emma felt a surge of both pride and apprehension. Being selected to lead was an opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities, but having Cooper on her team added a complication she could have done without. The younger recruit's attitude toward her had remained subtly challenging since their arrival at Fort Benning. Fire Team Bravo will be led by Wilson, Calloway continued, assigning the remaining recruits to their groups. You'll depart at 5-minute intervals. Alpha Team goes first. As Emma gathered her team to review their map and plan their approach, Cooper made his skepticism evident. "No offense, Reyes, but have you ever actually done this outside of training?" "That's why it's called training, Cooper," she replied evenly, refusing to be baited. "None of us have done this for real yet, that's the point." Martinez and Chen, both quieter and more serious recruits, exchanged glances but said nothing. Emma appreciated their silent support. "Our first observation point is here," she continued, pointing to a location on the map. "Approximately 2 clicks northeast. We'll use this ridgeline for cover, then descend through the ravine to approach from the west." Cooper looked ready to suggest an alternative, but Emma cut him off. "Unless you have tactical input about the plan, save it. We move in 5 minutes." To her mild surprise, Cooper nodded. Whatever his personal feelings, he seemed to recognize the importance of unity during the exercise. The team moved out as scheduled, entering the dense woods that quickly enveloped them in dappled shadow. Emma took point, setting a careful pace that balanced speed with noise discipline. Her natural sense of direction, honed through years of hiking and outdoor activities before joining the Army, served her well as they navigated the unfamiliar terrain. They successfully located their first observation point, a small clearing containing a mock-up of an enemy command post, without incident. Emma directed her team to establish a concealed position and observe for the required 15 minutes before moving to their next objective. "Not bad, Reyes," Cooper whispered as they lay prone beneath a tangle of undergrowth. "Though we could have saved time by crossing that open area back there." "And been completely exposed," Emma countered softly. "The extra 10 minutes was worth the cover." Their second objective proved more challenging. As they approached a simulated ammunition depot, Emma spotted movement, 2 OPFOR soldiers patrolling the perimeter. She signaled her team to freeze, then pointed out the threat. "We need to circle around," she whispered. "There's too much open ground between us and the objective." Cooper frowned. "That'll take forever. We should split up. 2 of us create a distraction while the others observe the target." Emma considered this. The suggestion had merit from a purely tactical perspective, but splitting their small team carried significant risks. "Negative. We stay together. Follow me." She led them on a wide flanking movement, using the natural contours of the land for concealment. It took nearly 40 minutes to reach a position that offered a view of the objective while keeping them hidden from the patrolling OPFOR. "Good call," Cooper admitted reluctantly as they settled into observation positions. "I spotted 2 more of them on the far side. We would have been caught in a crossfire." Emma nodded acknowledgement, secretly pleased by the small victory. Cooper's respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned through demonstrable competence. Their final objective was located in a particularly challenging position, atop a small hill with minimal cover on its approaches. As they studied it from a distance, Emma felt her tactical options narrowing. "This is going to be tricky," she murmured. "No clear approach without exposure." "Maybe we should try Cooper's earlier idea," Martinez suggested. "A diversion might work here." Emma weighed the options carefully. "Agreed. Cooper, you and Martinez create a small distraction to the north. Nothing obvious, just enough movement to draw attention. Chen and I will approach from the south. We rendezvous back at this position in 30 minutes. The plan worked perfectly. While Cooper and Martinez rustled branches and snapped twigs at a distance, Emma and Chen crawled through the underbrush to reach their observation point. The OPFOR guards moved to investigate the northern disturbance, allowing the team to complete their mission undetected. When all four reunited at the designated meeting point, even Cooper seemed genuinely impressed. "Nice execution, Rays. You actually know what you're doing." "Try not to sound so surprised," Emma replied with a hint of a smile. "Now let's head back to the starting point before the other teams beat us there." They were within 100 meters of their extraction point when disaster struck. A crack of branches announced the presence of OPFOR soldiers who had been waiting in ambush specifically to catch returning teams. "Down," Emma hissed, dropping immediately to the ground. Her teammates followed suit, but not quickly enough. A training sensor on Cooper's helmet registered a hit, accompanied by the distinctive beep that signaled a casualty. "Team Alpha, 1 man down," came the announcement over the training radio. "Proceed accordingly." Emma assessed the situation rapidly. They were pinned down, with at least 2 OPFOR soldiers between them and their extraction point. Cooper was officially dead for training purposes, which meant the remaining 3 would need to evacuate his body while still completing their mission. "Martinez, provide covering fire to the northeast," she ordered. "Chen, help me with Cooper. We're going to drag him to that depression behind us, then reassess." The mock firefight that ensued was chaotic but controlled. Using training techniques they'd practiced repeatedly, Emma's team managed to retreat to a defensive position while returning fire with their blank-loaded rifles. "We need to circle back and approach the extraction point from the west," Emma decided after studying their map. "It's longer, but the terrain offers better cover." "That means carrying Cooper another half-mile," Martinez pointed out, referring to the training requirement that casualties be evacuated rather than abandoned. "Then we'd better get moving," Emma replied, securing Cooper's equipment for the awkward task of dragging their 180-pound teammate through the forest. The detour proved exhausting but effective. After 40 minutes of grueling movement, they reached the extraction point without further contact. Master Sergeant Calloway stood waiting, his expression revealing nothing as he checked his watch. "Team Alpha, mission complete," Emma reported, trying to control her labored breathing. "1 casualty sustained during extraction." Calloway surveyed the mud-covered, sweat-soaked team with a measuring gaze. "Time to Objective 1, acceptable. Approach to Objective 2, well executed. Adaptation at Objective 3, creative and effective. Casualty evacuation, determined if somewhat inefficient." He made notes on his clipboard before continuing. "Cooper, report to remedial training after debrief. The rest of you, good work maintaining team cohesion under pressure." As the other teams began to return from their exercises, Emma's team used the time to recover, drinking water and comparing notes on their performance. Cooper, despite his death during the exercise, seemed less resentful than she had expected. "That was actually pretty solid leadership, Rays," he admitted, wiping mud from his face. "Better than most of the squad leaders in my basic training platoon." Coming from Cooper, this qualified as effusive praise. Emma nodded acknowledgement. "You had good input, too. That diversion tactic worked exactly as planned." Their conversation was interrupted when Staff Sergeant Mills approached. "Master Sergeant Calloway wants all team leaders for debrief in 10 minutes. The rest of you clean your weapons and prepare for the next phase of training." The debriefing took place in a small clearing where Calloway had established a temporary command post. Emma and the other team leaders gathered around a map table as he systematically reviewed each team's performance, highlighting strengths and identifying weaknesses with clinical precision. "Rays," he said when he came to Team Alpha's results, "your navigation was excellent, but you need to work on contingency planning. The ambush during extraction was placed there specifically to test your ability to anticipate threats, even when focused on completing your primary objective." "Yes, Master Sergeant," Emma acknowledged, taking the critique professionally. "That said," Calloway continued, "your adaptability and leadership when faced with the unexpected were commendable. You maintained control under pressure and prioritized both mission completion and casualty evacuation." The faintest hint of approval colored his tone, and Emma felt a disproportionate sense of satisfaction at the measured praise. As the debriefing concluded and the team leaders prepared to rejoin their squads, Calloway held Emma back. A word, raise. Yes, Master Sergeant. Calloway studied her with that same measuring gaze she had noticed from their first meeting. You handled Cooper well out there. He has potential but needs the right kind of leadership to develop it. He's young, Emma replied diplomatically, but he's tactically sound when he focuses. Youth isn't an excuse for attitude, Calloway said firmly. But you're right about his tactical instincts. Keep challenging him constructively. As Emma turned to leave, Calloway added something unexpected. By the way, your approach to Objective 3, using natural terrain features for concealed movement rather than speed, that showed good judgment. It's the kind of decision that keeps soldiers alive in actual combat. The comment stayed with Emma throughout the evening as the recruits prepared their equipment for the next day's training. There had been something in Calloway's voice when he mentioned combat, a weight of experience that transcended theoretical knowledge. Later, as the platoon gathered around a small campfire for their evening meal, the conversation inevitably turned to the day's exercises. Cooper, who had returned from his remedial training looking thoroughly exhausted, slumped down beside Emma. Remind me never to get killed again, he groaned. 2 hours of battle drills in full gear is not my idea of a good time. Consider it motivation to stay alive next time, Emma replied with a hint of a smile. The friendly banter was interrupted when one of the recruits asked a question that had been circulating among them. Anyone know what Master Sergeant Calloway did to earn his Silver Star? Probably something in Iraq or Afghanistan, another recruit suggested. He looks about the right age for those deployments. Cooper shook his head. I overheard Staff Sergeant Mills saying it was from Somalia back in the 90s, something about a rescue operation that went sideways. Why don't you ask him yourself? Emma suggested, nodding toward the edge of their encampment where Calloway had just appeared, making his evening rounds to check security and readiness. No way, Cooper replied immediately. The man intimidates me enough already. As Calloway approached their fire, the recruits fell silent, a reaction he seemed accustomed to. How's the chow tonight? He asked, his gruff voice somehow less severe in the firelight. Better than yesterday, Master Sergeant, one of the recruits ventured. Enjoy it. Tomorrow you'll be on field rations during the extended patrol exercise. Calloway's gaze swept over the group, lingering momentarily on Cooper. How were those remedial drills, Private? Educational, Master Sergeant, Cooper replied, straightening despite his fatigue. Good, education is why we're all here. Calloway turned to continue his rounds, but paused when he noticed several recruits staring at his forearm, where his sleeve had ridden up to reveal more of the tattoo Emma had glimpsed earlier. In the firelight, the design was clearly visible, a stylized spectral figure rendered in faded black ink that had spread slightly with age. What caught Emma's attention, however, was the unit designation incorporated into the design, 56th INF. Cooper noticed it too, his eyes widening slightly as he made the connection to their earlier discussion about the Ghost Battalion. But before anyone could comment, Calloway pulled his sleeve down and continued on his way, leaving the recruits to their meal and their speculations. That tattoo, Cooper said once Calloway was out of earshot. It matches the Ghost Battalion stories he was telling. Maybe he's more connected to the unit's history than we realized, Emma suggested. What neither of them understood yet was just how deep that connection ran, or how soon they would discover the full truth behind Master Sergeant Calloway's tattoo and the living history he represented. The next 3 days tested Emma and her fellow recruits beyond anything they had experienced in basic training. Master Sergeant Calloway led them through a grueling series of tactical exercises, night operations, and extended patrols designed to push their physical and mental limits. Sleep came in brief intervals, rations were limited, and the Georgia summer heat became an adversary as formidable as the OPFOR they faced in simulated engagements. Through it all, Calloway maintained a demanding but fair approach, offering criticism and rare praise with equal precision. Emma noticed that he seemed to expect more from her than from some of the others, challenging her leadership decisions and tactical judgments with particular scrutiny. He's harder on you because you're a woman, Cooper suggested during a brief rest period as they refilled canteens at a small stream. Old school mentality. Emma disagreed. I don't think that's it. He pushes Wilson and Martinez just as hard. I think he identifies potential and demands more from those he believes can deliver it. Cooper considered this, clearly unconvinced but unwilling to argue the point. Their relationship had evolved over the past days, not quite friendship, but a growing professional respect that transcended their initial friction. On the fourth morning, as they broke camp after a night exercise, Staff Sergeant Mills announced a change to their training schedule. Listen up, people. Today's operation will be a battalion-wide exercise. You'll be integrated into squads with recruits from other platoons for a simulated combat scenario at Urban Training Complex B. Urban operations presented a different kind of challenge. The close quarters, three-dimensional battlefield of buildings and streets required distinct tactics from the woodland environments they had been training in. As the platoon loaded into trucks for transport to the training site, Emma found herself assigned to a squad with Cooper and 6 recruits from other platoons she hadn't worked with before. To her surprise, Master Sergeant Calloway himself would be accompanying their particular squad rather than supervising the overall exercise. Today I'll be evaluating your performance directly, he explained as they traveled. Consider me an observer, not a participant. You'll receive your specific mission parameters upon arrival. The urban training complex came into view as they rounded a bend in the road, a sprawling collection of concrete structures designed to simulate a small town, complete with multi-story buildings, narrow alleys, and open squares. Construction was deliberately unfinished in places, providing the challenging, rubble-strewn environment that characterized many actual combat zones. "Welcome to Little Fallujah," one of the unfamiliar recruits commented as they disembarked. "My brother trained here before deploying to Iraq, said the real thing was worse, but this gave him a taste." Their squad was assigned a specific mission: locate and secure a high-value target, played by a role player, believed to be hiding in the northeastern quadrant of the complex. Intelligence suggested the target was guarded by several OPFOR personnel, and civilian role players would be present throughout the area, complicating their rules of engagement. Emma found herself designated as squad leader, a position that placed her in command of all 8 recruits for the duration of the exercise. The responsibility was significant, especially with Master Sergeant Calloway observing directly. "We'll approach in 2 fire teams," she decided after studying the map and aerial photographs provided in their mission brief. "Cooper, you'll lead Team 2 and maintain communication with me throughout. We'll clear buildings methodically, working from the southern entry point toward the target area." Cooper nodded, accepting the assignment without hesitation. "Roger that. We'll need to maintain visual contact between teams when possible. These buildings create natural blind spots." Their operation began smoothly enough, with both fire teams entering the complex and beginning their building clearing procedures as trained. Emma led from the front, directing her team's movements while maintaining awareness of Cooper's team's position via radio. The first engagement came 30 minutes into the exercise. An OPFOR team concealed in a partially collapsed structure opened fire with blank ammunition, their training sensors registering hits on one of Emma's team members. "Man down," called Private Rodriguez, one of the recruits from another platoon, "taking fire from the second story." Emma quickly assessed the situation, directing her remaining team members to establish suppressive fire while she dragged the wounded recruit to cover. She radioed Cooper for supporting fire from his position across the street, creating a crossfire that forced the OPFOR to retreat. "Good reaction time," Calloway commented from his observer position, making notes on his clipboard. "But your initial approach exposed your flank unnecessarily." The critique was valid, and Emma acknowledged it with a nod before reorganizing her team to continue the mission. With one member now designated as a casualty, they would need to adjust their tactics accordingly. As they progressed deeper into the complex, the scenario grew increasingly complicated. Civilian role players appeared, some acting hostile while others played scared bystanders. OPFOR fighters would engage, then blend back into the population, testing the recruits' ability to identify legitimate threats and maintain fire discipline. Emma's leadership was tested further when Cooper's team encountered a simulated improvised explosive device, resulting in 2 more casualties that required evacuation. The exercise's parameters dictated that wounded team members couldn't be left behind, creating a resource strain as combat-effective recruits had to manage their injured comrades. Rays were down to 3 effectives, Cooper radioed, his voice tense with the stress of the scenario, requesting guidance. Emma made a quick decision. Consolidate our forces, bring your team to Building 12, we'll establish a defensive position and reassess. The combined teams created a more robust unit, albeit one encumbered by 3 casualties. Emma reorganized their formation to provide both security and mobility, placing their strongest recruits on the perimeter while maintaining their advance toward the target area. Throughout these developments, Master Sergeant Calloway observed silently, his expression revealing nothing as he evaluated their performance. The only indication of his assessment came through occasional brief comments. Check your sectors more thoroughly, or mind your spacing in that alleyway. As they approached the final building where intelligence suggested their high-value target was located, Emma gathered the remaining combat-effective recruits for a hasty planning session. Intel suggests at least 3 guards with the HVT, she reminded them. Building has 2 floors and multiple rooms. Cooper, your team will secure the ground floor and stairwell. My team will clear the 2nd floor where the HVT is likely located. Cooper nodded, his earlier skepticism about her leadership completely absent now. We'll need to move fast once we breach. Element of surprise is critical. The assault on the final building proceeded according to their training, with teams moving in coordinated rushes, covering each other's advances, and methodically clearing rooms. Emma led her team up the stairs after Cooper's group secured the ground level, maintaining communication through hand signals and quiet radio calls. On the 2nd floor, they encountered the scenario's final challenge. The high-value target was indeed present, but with a role player acting as a civilian shield, creating a complex ethical and tactical dilemma. Hands where I can see them, Emma ordered, her rifle trained on the OPFOR fighter who held a civilian role player in front of him. You shoot, she dies, the OPFOR replied, playing his role with convincing menace. Emma maintained her aim while assessing options. The scenario was designed to test not just tactical proficiency, but judgment under pressure. A wrong decision here could result in failing the entire exercise despite their progress so far. Cooper's status, she called quietly into her radio. Ground floor secure. No additional threats detected, came the response. Emma made her decision. Lower your weapon slowly and release the hostage, she commanded the OPFOR. You're surrounded with no exit. This ends one of 2 ways, but it ends now. The standoff lasted several tense seconds before the OPFOR fighter, following his scenario instructions, slowly released the hostage and lowered his weapon. Target secured, Emma reported, directing her team to zip-tie the prisoner as they would in an actual operation. Exercise complete, came the announcement over the training facility's loudspeaker system. All units stand down and report to your designated rally points for debrief. As the adrenaline of the scenario subsided, Emma felt the accumulated fatigue of the past days wash over her. The exercise had demanded every ounce of her focus and energy, testing not just her tactical knowledge, but her leadership under pressure. The debrief took place in a classroom building adjacent to the training complex. Each squad's performance was reviewed, with instructors highlighting successful tactics and identifying areas for improvement. When Emma's squad came under discussion, Master Sergeant Calloway took the floor. Squad 4 demonstrated effective small unit leadership and tactical adaptability, he began, his assessment characteristically precise. Initial building approaches showed some vulnerability, but adjustments were made appropriately after first contact. Casualty management was handled effectively without compromising the mission objective. He continued with a methodical analysis of their performance, neither overly critical nor particularly effusive in his evaluation. It was only at the conclusion that he offered something approaching praise. The final hostile negotiation was handled with appropriate restraint and tactical positioning. Squad leader Reyes demonstrated good judgment in a complex scenario with ethical dimensions. Overall performance, above standard. Coming from Calloway, above standard felt like extraordinary praise. Emma accepted the assessment with a professional nod, though she couldn't help feeling a surge of satisfaction at the recognition. As the recruits were dismissed for evening chow and recovery time, Cooper fell in beside Emma as they walked toward the dining facility. "Not bad for a college kid," he said, the teasing comment softened by genuine respect in his tone. "Not bad for a team of sleep-deprived trainees," she corrected, including him in the accomplishment. "Your ground floor clearance was textbook." "So do you think the old man was impressed?" Cooper asked, referring to Calloway. "Hard to tell with him." "I think if he wasn't, we would have heard about it in detail," Emma replied with a slight smile. After dinner, as the recruits enjoyed a rare evening of relative relaxation, Emma found herself sitting at a table with Cooper and several others, their conversation eventually turning to speculation about their instructors, a favorite pastime of soldiers throughout military history. "I still wonder about Calloway's Silver Star," one recruit mused. "The man's like a walking combat manual, but he never talks about his own experiences." "That tattoo is definitely from the Ghost Battalion," Cooper added, having fully reversed his earlier skepticism. "I looked it up online during last weekend's break. That same Ghost design was unofficial unit insignia during Desert Storm." "Maybe he earned the Silver Star with the 56th, another recruit suggested. "Or maybe he just got the tattoo because he's assigned to train us," Cooper countered. "Some instructors do that, adopt the unit identity of wherever they're posted." Emma had remained silent during this exchange, but now she spoke up. "I don't think that's it. Have you noticed how he always says our battalion when he talks about the 56th's history, and he knows details that aren't in any official record? I think his connection runs deeper." Their speculation was interrupted when Staff Sergeant Mills entered the dining facility and approached their table. "Rays, the Master Sergeant wants to see you. He's in the instructor's office." Emma felt a momentary apprehension. Being summoned individually after hours usually meant either very good or very bad news. She made her way to the small building that housed the training cadre's offices, wondering what additional assessment Calloway might have of her performance. She found him reviewing paperwork, his desk lamp casting harsh shadows across his weathered features. "Reporting as ordered, Master Sergeant," she said, standing at attention in the doorway. "At ease, Rays. Take a seat." Calloway gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I wanted to discuss your performance trajectory over the past weeks. You've shown consistent improvement in tactical decision-making and small unit leadership." "Thank you, Master Sergeant." Calloway set aside his paperwork, fixing her with that same measuring gaze she had come to recognize. "More importantly, you've demonstrated an ability to lead soldiers who initially questioned your capability. Not an easy task, particularly for female infantry recruits in this transitional period." The direct acknowledgement of the gender dynamic surprised Emma. Calloway had never before referenced the challenges specific to women integrating into combat roles. "The infantry is changing," he continued. "As it should. Combat doesn't care about gender, only competence, courage, and the ability to adapt under pressure." Something in his tone suggested personal conviction rather than rehearsed institutional messaging. Emma ventured a question. "May I ask, Master Sergeant, what your experience has been with integrated units?" Calloway considered the question before answering. "Limited, until recently. My combat deployments predated the formal integration of women into infantry units. But I've seen enough in training environments to know that what matters is the individual soldier, not their gender." He paused, seemingly making a decision about how much to share. "That said, I've served alongside women in combat zones, intelligence officers, medical personnel, military police, who demonstrated every quality needed in infantry soldiers. The policy caught up to the reality eventually." This glimpse into his personal perspective intrigued Emma, suggesting a nuance to his thinking that transcended the stereotypical, old-school mentality Cooper had initially attributed to him. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Staff Sergeant Mills appeared, looking slightly apologetic for the intrusion. "Sorry, Master Sergeant, but Colonel Hayes is on the phone, says it's urgent." "Thank you for your time, Master Sergeant," Emma said, rising to leave. Calloway nodded dismissal. "Continue on your current trajectory, Rays. The battalion needs leaders with your capabilities." As Emma made her way back to the barracks, she reflected on their conversation. Calloway remained something of an enigma, a veteran instructor whose connection to the unit's history seemed personal, yet remained largely unspoken. The respect he had shown her felt earned rather than granted, making it all the more valuable. What she couldn't know was that the following day would bring revelations that would transform her understanding of both Master Sergeant Calloway and the legacy of the unit she was training to join. Revelations that would begin with an unlikely source. The skeptical Private Cooper, whose mockery of an old soldier's story would give way to a discovery that would silence his doubts forever. The final phase of their advanced training began with a 5-day field exercise designed to simulate extended combat operations. The entire company deployed to a remote training area, establishing patrol bases and conducting continuous day and night operations against an OPFOR that had been augmented with experienced soldiers from the Rangers and 10th Mountain Division. For Emma, the exercise represented the culmination of everything they had learned: land navigation, small unit tactics, weapons proficiency, and the critical skill of maintaining combat effectiveness despite physical exhaustion and mental stress. She had been assigned as a squad leader again, with Cooper serving as her team leader, their working relationship now characterized by mutual respect rather than the friction that had marked their early interactions. On the third day, as her squad prepared for a night reconnaissance mission, Emma noticed Cooper studying a book that wasn't part of their standard training materials, a worn paperback with a faded cover. "What's that?" she asked as she checked her equipment for the upcoming patrol. Cooper held up the book, Ghost Warriors, the 56th Infantry in Combat. "Found it at the PX last weekend. It's a history of our battalion from World War II through Desert Storm. Published in the 90s, so it doesn't cover the recent deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan." Emma raised an eyebrow, doing some research on the unit. "After all of Calloway's stories, I got curious," Cooper admitted. "Turns out most of what he told us checks out, though the book has more details on some operations than others." "Anything about Vietnam?" He seemed to have personal knowledge of those operations. Cooper shook his head. "The Vietnam chapters are pretty thin, just general deployments and major engagements, nothing specific about that guerrilla operation he mentioned." He hesitated, then added, "But there's something weird in the Desert Storm section. There's a photo that—" His comment was cut short by Staff Sergeant Mills's arrival. "Gear up, Squad 2. Your patrol briefing starts in 15 minutes. The night reconnaissance mission proved particularly challenging. Emma's squad was tasked with locating an OPFOR command post believed to be operating in a densely wooded area 10 kilometers from their patrol base. The terrain was difficult, the night moonless, and the OPFOR had established multiple security positions to detect approaching reconnaissance elements. Under Emma's leadership, the squad moved methodically through the darkness, using terrain features for concealment and maintaining strict noise and light discipline. Cooper led the point team, his woodland navigation skills proving valuable as they approached their objective area. They successfully located the OPFOR command post shortly after midnight, a well-camouflaged collection of tents and vehicles hidden in a shallow depression. Emma established an observation position on higher ground, directing her squad to gather intelligence on personnel movements, equipment, and defensive arrangements. The mission parameters required them to observe for 4 hours before withdrawing, a period that tested their ability to remain motionless and alert despite fatigue and the uncomfortable conditions of their concealed positions. It was during this long observation period, as most of the squad maintained watch in shifts, that Cooper found an opportunity to continue his earlier conversation with Emma. "About that book," he whispered, his voice barely audible as they lay side by side watching the OPFOR position through night vision devices. "There's a photograph in the Desert Storm chapter of a platoon from the 56th that was involved in a reconnaissance mission similar to what we're doing now." "And," Emma prompted when he paused, "one of the soldiers in the photo, he's younger with a full head of dark hair, but I swear it's Calloway. Same eyes, same scar along the jawline." Emma wasn't particularly surprised. He mentioned serving with the 56th for over 30 years. Makes sense he'd have been with them during Desert Storm. "That's not the weird part," Cooper continued. "According to the caption, this platoon was operating behind Iraqi lines when they were ambushed. They were cut off for 3 days before making it back to friendly positions. The soldier I think is Calloway is identified as Sergeant James Calloway, who received the Silver Star for actions during the incident. So his Silver Star did come from service with the 56th, Emma concluded, still not seeing why that's strange. Cooper lowered his voice further. Because the caption also says this incident is where the platoon earned the nickname Calloway's Ghosts, after disappearing into the desert and reappearing days later, having completed their mission despite being presumed lost. Emma processed this information, the connections forming in her mind. So Calloway isn't just assigned to the 56th now, he's actually part of the unit's Ghost Battalion legacy. Exactly. He's not just telling stories about the unit's history, he lived part of it. Their conversation was interrupted by movement in the OPFOR command post, a changing of the guard that required their full attention. The remainder of their observation period passed without further discussion, both of them focused on gathering the intelligence required by their mission parameters. The squad withdrew successfully before dawn, making their way back to their patrol base without detection, an accomplishment that earned them rare praise from Staff Sergeant Mills during the morning debrief. Squad 2 has set the standard for reconnaissance effectiveness, Mills announced to the assembled platoon. Clean insertion, thorough intelligence gathering, and extraction without compromise. That's how it's done. Emma felt a surge of pride at the recognition, not just for herself, but for her entire squad. Cooper caught her eye across the gathering, giving a slight nod of acknowledgement for her leadership. The day proceeded with equipment maintenance, meal breaks, and preparation for the next phase of operations. It was during an afternoon resupply that Emma noticed Master Sergeant Calloway speaking with several officers from battalion headquarters who had arrived via helicopter. Their conversation appeared serious, with Calloway repeatedly shaking his head as if disagreeing with whatever was being proposed. Later, as the platoon prepared for evening operations, Staff Sergeant Mills gathered them for an unexpected announcement. Change of plans, people. Battalion has received intelligence about a high-value OPFOR element operating in Sector Echo. We're tasking Squad 2 to conduct a special reconnaissance mission to confirm their location. Emma exchanged glances with Cooper, both of them recognizing that this deviation from the training schedule was unusual. Typically, exercises were carefully planned and scripted to ensure specific training objectives were met. Squad 2, report to the command tent in 15 minutes for mission briefing, Mills continued. The rest of you will continue with previously assigned operations. In the command tent, Emma found Master Sergeant Calloway studying a map with the visiting officers. Their conversation ceased as she entered with her squad. Rays, your squad has been selected for a specific mission based on your performance in yesterday's reconnaissance operation, Calloway explained without preamble. This will be more challenging than your previous tasks, with an OPFOR composed of experienced operators who will test your capabilities to their limits. The mission parameters were indeed daunting. A long-range insertion into unfamiliar territory, location and assessment of an OPFOR element believed to be planning a significant operation, and extraction without detection. The intelligence suggested the OPFOR included special operations personnel specifically tasked with counter-reconnaissance. Questions? Calloway asked after outlining the mission details. Time frame, Master Sergeant? Emma inquired, already formulating her approach. You'll move out at 2100 hours. Expected mission duration is 12 hours minimum, potentially extending to 24 depending on intelligence developments. As the briefing concluded and her squad prepared their equipment, Emma sensed something unusual about the assignment. The parameters seemed more complex than typical training scenarios, and the presence of officers from battalion headquarters suggested higher-level interest in the outcome. Cooper voiced similar thoughts as they checked their gear. This feels different, more like a real-world mission profile than a training exercise. Stay focused on the fundamentals, Emma advised. Whatever they're testing us on, solid tactics and good judgment will see us through. The mission began as scheduled, with Emma's squad moving out under cover of darkness. They traveled light, carrying only essential equipment to maximize mobility and stealth. The first phase, a 10-kilometer movement to their initial observation position, proceeded without incident, though the terrain proved more challenging than indicated on their maps. They reached their designated area shortly after midnight, establishing a concealed patrol base from which they would begin their reconnaissance at first light. As the squad settled into their security positions, Emma conducted a final review of their intelligence materials. "Our target is supposedly in this valley," she told Cooper, indicating a location on their map. "But something doesn't add up. The terrain doesn't favor a defensive position, and there are better areas nearby if they're planning an operation." Cooper studied the map, his expression thoughtful. "Could be deliberate misinformation, maybe testing if we'll blindly follow intelligence or verify it through our own observation." "Good point. We'll send out observation teams at dawn to check both the primary location and these alternate sites." Emma trusted Cooper's tactical instincts, which had proven sound throughout their training. As gray light filtered through the forest canopy the next morning, Emma dispatched two-person teams to conduct initial reconnaissance of their target area. She and Cooper formed one team, moving silently through the underbrush toward a ridgeline that offered a view of the valley below. What they discovered was unexpected. There was indeed an OPFOR presence, but not in the configuration or location specified in their intelligence. Instead of a command element, they observed what appeared to be a small prisoner camp, with role players acting as guards and several individuals in simulated restraints. "This wasn't in the briefing," Cooper whispered as they observed from their concealed position. "Some kind of personnel recovery scenario." Emma frowned. "Possibly, but why not brief us on the actual mission parameters? This changes our entire approach." They continued observation for another hour, noting guard rotations, defensive arrangements, and possible approaches for closer reconnaissance. Emma then made the decision to consolidate their squad for a comprehensive assessment before proceeding. As the squad gathered at their patrol base to review findings, a new complication arose. Private Rodriguez, who had been monitoring their radio, reported a transmission on their emergency frequency. "It's Staff Sergeant Mills," Rodriguez reported. "Says there's been a change in the exercise. All squads are to return to base immediately." Emma felt immediate suspicion. The timing was too convenient, coming just as they had discovered the unexpected nature of the OPFOR position. Did he use the authentication code? Rodriguez looked surprised by the question. "No, ma'am, just a direct recall order." "Then we maintain mission parameters," Emma decided. "This could be OPFOR attempting to compromise our operation through false communications." Cooper nodded agreement. "Standard counter-reconnaissance technique. They know we're in the area and are trying to flush us out." With the squad in agreement, Emma developed a new plan addressing the actual situation they faced rather than their original briefing. "We'll establish observation posts covering all approaches to the camp. If this is a personnel recovery scenario, we need comprehensive intelligence before considering any action." The squad deployed according to her instructions, establishing a perimeter of observation posts that provided overlapping coverage of the target area. Emma and Cooper took the position with the best view of the camp's interior, continuing to document activities and personnel movements. After several hours of observation, Emma had gathered sufficient intelligence to confirm the nature of the scenario. "It's definitely a simulated POW camp. 4 guards visible, rotating in 2-hour shifts. 6 prisoners in 2 separate enclosures. Minimal support personnel." "So what's our play?" Cooper asked. "The mission brief was reconnaissance only, but this seems like it's designed to test whether we'll adapt to new information." Emma considered their options carefully. "We complete our reconnaissance mission as briefed, document everything, prepare a comprehensive intelligence package, and extract without detection. If they wanted us to conduct a rescue operation, they would have included that in our parameters." Cooper looked slightly disappointed but nodded agreement. "By the book, I get it." Their plan proceeded accordingly, with the squad maintaining observation for the required period before beginning a careful withdrawal. They had nearly reached their extraction point when the scenario took another unexpected turn. Movement in the forest ahead alerted Emma to a potential threat. She signaled the squad to take cover as a patrol of OPFOR soldiers appeared, moving directly across their planned route. 8 personnel moving northwest, Cooper whispered. "Looks like a deliberate blocking position." Emma assessed the situation quickly. The OPFOR patrol had effectively cut off their primary extraction route, forcing a decision: Attempt to bypass unseen, find an alternate route, or wait for the patrol to move on. We'll divert to Extraction Point Bravo, she decided after consulting their map. It adds 4 kilometers but avoids potential contact. The diversion proved challenging, requiring movement through a marshy area not well documented on their maps. The squad's progress slowed considerably as they navigated the difficult terrain, aware that their mission timeline was becoming increasingly compressed. They were approximately 2 kilometers from their alternate extraction point when disaster struck. Private Tor's moving point triggered a well-concealed noise device, likely placed specifically to detect units attempting to circumvent the main OPFOR positions. Within minutes, they heard the unmistakable sound of vehicles and personnel responding to the alert. Emma made a rapid decision. Disperse and evade. Teams of 2 maintain communication silence unless absolutely necessary. Rally at Extraction Point Bravo in 2 hours. The squad split according to her instructions, with Emma and Cooper moving northeast while the others took different directions. The forest echoed with the sounds of OPFOR search parties as they pushed deeper into the underbrush, using every technique they had learned for evasion and concealment. "This is extreme for a training exercise," Cooper commented as they paused to listen for pursuers. "They've committed significant resources to hunting us down." Emma shared his assessment but remained focused on their immediate objective. "Whatever they're testing, our job is to complete the mission. Let's keep moving." They managed to avoid detection for nearly an hour before luck turned against them. A helicopter appeared overhead, its downdraft shaking the forest canopy as it hovered along their likely escape route. Shortly afterward, they heard voices approaching. An OPFOR patrol had picked up their trail. "We need to split up," Emma decided. "I'll create a diversion to draw them off. You continue to the extraction point and ensure the intelligence package gets delivered." Cooper looked ready to argue but recognized the tactical logic of her plan. "Be careful. These guys aren't playing around." Emma nodded, then deliberately moved away from their position, creating just enough noise to attract attention without making her presence too obvious. The gambit worked. The OPFOR patrol changed direction, following her trail while Cooper slipped away toward the extraction point. What followed was an intense game of cat and mouse through the forest. Emma used every evasion technique in her training, doubling back, using water courses to mask her trail, and creating false leads to confuse her pursuers. Despite her best efforts, however, the OPFOR gradually closed in, demonstrating a level of tracking skill that confirmed Cooper's assessment. These were experienced operators, not typical training cadre. Eventually, Emma found herself cornered near a rocky outcropping, with OPFOR approaching from multiple directions. She had succeeded in her primary objective, buying time for Cooper to reach the extraction point with their intelligence, but her own situation had become untenable. When the OPFOR finally converged on her position, Emma was surprised to find Master Sergeant Calloway leading them personally. "Exercise terminated, Rays," he announced as the OPFOR surrounded her. "Your squad successfully completed the primary mission objective." Emma maintained her professional demeanor despite her confusion. "Thank you, Master Sergeant. May I ask what the actual parameters were? The scenario we encountered differed significantly from our briefing." "That was deliberate," Calloway confirmed as they began walking back toward the vehicles that would return them to base. "The exercise was designed to test your ability to adapt to unexpected developments and make sound decisions based on actual conditions rather than preconceived expectations." As they emerged from the forest, Emma was surprised to see not just the training cadre but several senior officers waiting at the assembly area. Her squad had already returned, with Cooper standing beside a lieutenant colonel Emma didn't recognize. "Squad 2, form up," Calloway ordered. As the squad assembled, the lieutenant colonel stepped forward. "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Garrison, battalion commander of the 56th Infantry. I've been observing your performance in this exercise personally." The presence of the battalion commander himself was unprecedented, suggesting a significance to the exercise beyond normal training evaluation. "Your squad was selected for this special assessment based on your performance throughout the training cycle," Garrison continued. "The scenario was designed to replicate an actual operation conducted by this battalion during Operation Desert Storm. a reconnaissance mission that encountered an unexpected POW situation requiring adaptive decision-making under pressure. Emma's eyes widened slightly as the connection formed in her mind. Cooper had mentioned a Desert Storm reconnaissance mission involving Calloway, the very mission that had apparently earned him his Silver Star and contributed to the Ghost Battalion legacy. Master Sergeant Calloway designed the scenario based on his personal experience, Garrison confirmed, as if reading her thoughts. Your squad's performance, particularly your decision to prioritize the reconnaissance mission while gathering intelligence on the POW situation, mirrored the decisions made during the actual operation. Garrison turned to address the entire squad. The 56th Infantry Battalion has a proud tradition of adaptability and mission focus in complex situations. Squad 2 has demonstrated those same qualities throughout this exercise. As the briefing concluded and the squad prepared to return to base, Emma found herself walking alongside Master Sergeant Calloway. The training cadre and officers had moved ahead, leaving them momentarily alone. "Sir," Emma ventured, "Private Cooper found a book about the battalion's history. It mentioned your platoon during Desert Storm, Calloway's Ghosts. Was this exercise based on that specific operation?" Calloway was silent for a moment, his weathered face revealing nothing. Then he nodded once. "It was. My platoon was conducting reconnaissance when we discovered Iraqi forces holding several pilots captured after their aircraft went down. Our mission parameters didn't include personnel recovery, but the intelligence we gathered eventually enabled a successful rescue operation." He paused, then added something unexpected. "The book gets some details wrong. It wasn't my leadership that earned us the Ghost designation. It was the actions of my platoon sergeant, Sarah Calloway, my wife." Emma couldn't hide her surprise. "Your wife was in your platoon during Desert Storm." "She was the first female combat engineer assigned to the 56th in a support role," Calloway explained. "When our platoon was cut off, her expertise in demolitions and improvised devices created the diversions that allowed us to evade superior forces. The Ghost techniques that kept us alive for those 3 days were largely her innovations." The revelation stunned Emma. Calloway had never mentioned this personal connection to the battalion's history, or that a woman had played such a significant role in one of the unit's defining moments. "The Army was different then," Calloway continued. "Her contributions were acknowledged within the unit but minimized in official reports. She received a Bronze Star rather than the Silver Star she deserved, and her role was downplayed in most accounts of the operation." Emma began to understand Calloway's measured but supportive approach to female recruits integrating into combat roles. His perspective wasn't based on abstract principles, but personal experience with a woman whose combat effectiveness he had witnessed firsthand. "Is she still serving?" Emma asked. Calloway shook his head, his expression momentarily softening. "No. Sarah retired as a master sergeant in 2010. She's the one who encouraged me to request this assignment working with new infantry recruits, especially now that women are officially permitted in the role she essentially performed 30 years ago without the formal designation." They walked in silence for a moment before Calloway added, "I've watched your development during this training cycle, Raise. Your tactical judgment, leadership under pressure, and ability to adapt to changing circumstances. These are the qualities that define effective combat leaders regardless of gender." "Thank you, Master Sergeant," Emma replied, genuinely moved by what she recognized as significant praise from the normally reserved instructor. "One more thing," Calloway said as they approached the waiting vehicles. "That tattoo Cooper and the others have been speculating about. It's based on a design Sarah drew during those 3 days behind Iraqi lines, a reminder that sometimes survival depends on becoming like ghosts, present but unseen. After the operation, everyone in the platoon got the same tattoo, including Sarah." The next morning, as the training cycle entered its final days, Emma found Cooper at breakfast, his expression suggesting he had something important to share. "You're not going to believe this," he said without preamble, sliding onto the bench across from her. "I showed that book to Sergeant Mills last night, asked him about the Desert Storm mission and Calloway's involvement. Mills told me to turn to page 94. Cooper opened the book, pointing to a group photograph with the caption, "Members of Calloway's Ghosts after returning from their 3-day operation behind enemy lines." "Look at the second row, third from left," Cooper directed. Emma studied the photograph, immediately spotting what Cooper wanted her to see. Standing among the soldiers was a woman in desert battle dress, her arm around Calloway's shoulders. Despite the grainy quality of the old photograph, the resemblance between them was clear, the same determined eyes and strong jawline. "That's Sarah Calloway," Emma said. "His wife. She was a combat engineer assigned to his platoon." Cooper looked surprised. "How did you know that?" "Calloway told me yesterday after the exercise. She was the platoon sergeant, and apparently the one who developed many of the evasion tactics that kept them alive. The ghost techniques that became part of the battalion's legend." Cooper stared at the photograph with new understanding. "So when I was mocking his stories about the ghost battalion, you were mocking something he not only witnessed but helped create, alongside the woman he married," Emma finished for him. "And the tattoo you noticed matches the one in this photo, doesn't it?" Cooper nodded slowly. "Exactly the same design. Mills said everyone in the platoon got it after they made it back, including her." He closed the book, his expression thoughtful. "Guess I was wrong about a lot of things." "We all were," Emma acknowledged. "We saw an older instructor with shaky hands telling war stories, and some of us dismissed him as just another back-in-my-day veteran. We didn't recognize that he was living history, a direct connection to the legacy we're inheriting." As they finished their breakfast and prepared for the day's training, Emma reflected on how their perception of Master Sergeant Calloway had evolved over the weeks, from initial dismissal of an aging instructor to recognition of a combat veteran, and finally to understanding of his place in the unit's storied history. It was a journey that mirrored her own development as a soldier and leader, learning to see beyond surface appearances to the deeper truths that defined military service. Later that day, as the platoon conducted their final tactical exercise, Emma noticed a visitor observing from near the command tent, an older woman with silver-streaked hair and the straight-backed posture that marked career military personnel. Though dressed in civilian clothes, she carried herself with unmistakable authority, her gaze following the training with professional assessment. When the exercise concluded and the platoon assembled for debrief, Master Sergeant Calloway approached with the visitor beside him. "Before we begin the final assessment, I'd like to introduce someone. This is retired Master Sergeant Sarah Calloway, former platoon sergeant with the 56th Infantry." A murmur of recognition passed through the platoon, many eyes darting to Cooper, who had shared his discovery about Calloway's ghosts with his fellow recruits. "Master Sergeant Calloway has been kind enough to accept our invitation to speak briefly about her experiences with the battalion," Calloway continued, a hint of pride evident in his voice as he stepped aside for his wife. Sarah Calloway surveyed the platoon with the measured gaze of someone who had led soldiers in combat. 30 years ago, I served with this battalion in a role that wasn't officially recognized as a combat position, though the enemy bullets didn't seem to care about that technical distinction." Her dry delivery earned a ripple of appreciative chuckles from the platoon. "The 56th has always been defined by its adaptability and resilience, qualities that earned it the Ghost Battalion designation long before I joined its ranks. Those qualities aren't determined by gender or background, but by commitment to the mission and to your fellow soldiers." She paused, her gaze settling briefly on Emma and the other female recruits. "The Army has evolved since my time, recognizing officially what was already happening unofficially in combat zones around the world. But what hasn't changed is what makes an effective infantry soldier: tactical proficiency, mental toughness, and the ability to function as part of a cohesive unit." As Sarah Calloway continued her brief address, Emma noticed Cooper's expression. The last vestiges of his earlier skepticism completely gone, replaced by attentive respect. The young recruit who had mocked an old soldier's stories now sat transfixed by the living embodiment of the unit's legend. His understanding of the 56th Infantry's history, transformed by the recognition that the tattoo he had noticed matched not just the unit's legacy, but the personal experiences of the Calloways themselves. When the address concluded, and the platoon broke into small groups for their final evaluations, Cooper approached Emma with an uncharacteristic earnestness. "I get it now," he said simply. "What Calloway's been trying to teach us all along, it's not just about tactics or techniques. It's about understanding that we're part of something larger, a legacy that was built by real people in real situations, not just stories in a book." Emma nodded, recognizing the genuine growth in her once skeptical squad mate. And that legacy isn't defined by what someone looks like or where they came from. It's defined by what they do when it matters most. As they joined their evaluation group, Emma caught Master Sergeant Calloway watching them from across the training ground, his weathered face revealing a hint of satisfaction. In that moment, she understood that their journey through training had been about more than acquiring tactical skills or physical capabilities. It had been about connecting them to the living history of their battalion, a history embodied in the Calloways and the lessons they had imparted. The teen recruit who had mocked an old soldier's stories had indeed come to realize that the tattoo matched the unit's legend. But more importantly, he had discovered that legends aren't distant myths, but the accumulated deeds of real people. People like Master Sergeant James Calloway and his wife Sarah, whose shared experiences had helped forge the identity of the Ghost Battalion they were now proud to join.